right? So we will basically, right, going through the sessions, we will learn what are APIs, right? And of course, we will also have a session on Python, right? Python basic concepts, right? Which isn't part of this, but since um, we have people who doesn't know Python, so we will have one more session on Python. But then on API side, right? So we will go through the concepts of APIs, right? What are APIs, or why do we need APIs, or where do we use APIs in real life every day, right? So you might not know, but then every time you visit a web application, right? Any web application, then there are plenty of API calls that are being made from client to server, right? So we will also learn, how we can identify these APIs. Some of these APIs are documented in official documents, tool documents. Some of these APIs are not documented as well. We can still use these APIs, but then again, right? So there's always a risk of uh, maybe a tool removing those APIs as they are not officially documented APIs, right? So, but then yes, right. So we will learn how to identify these API calls, what kind of response they receive, how we can how we can use tools like Postman to reorchestrate these APIs, right? And we will also look at how the API call structure is how API call is structured, right? So what are different components of API call? So how do we send parameters? How do we send headers? What are actually headers? What are parameters? How does authentication work in these APIs, right? So every tool has their own its own way of authentication, right? So some provide basic authentication, some provide token based authentication, some provide OAuth, right? So there are different authentication mechanism. What are supported uh, authentication mechanism in Archer, right? We will look at some troubleshooting tools as well, right? Postman and Requestly, right? So basically these two tools where we can execute these APIs, we can look at the responses, we can modify the response, we can modify the record creation, getting records from tools, right? So all these we will look at that, right? Uh, and again, right? So we'll have a demo, right? I mean, again, right? So from a demo perspective, rather we will build a real integration in our sessions, right? So we will build a real integration between Archer and ServiceNow. We will have access to Archer Lab, which you guys will have access to as well. You guys can create you guys will have your system admin accounts in that lab. You can do whatever you want in that lab, Archer Lab. You can use that for integration. You can create new application and integrate with that application, or you can integrate with existing application, up to you guys, right? For ServiceNow, we will learn how we can get our own instance for integration, right? So ServiceNow provides instances, cloud instances, which you can use as well. So I also have an instance which I will use for integration. We will we will try to sync data between these two environments in real time, right? And when I say real time, it means we will write a code, and then we can schedule it on any basis, right? We can schedule it to run every 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minutes, right? That's near real time integration. So we will build a near real time integration between two tools, which is Archer and ServiceNow. We will also look at different code editors, right? So where we actually write code and we execute it, right? So we have VS Code, which is of course the most basic and most used tool, but then we have other tools as well. Again, most of these tools are port of or different variants of VS Code, right? So that's what we will use primarily. We will also look at the AI capabilities of such tools, how we can prompt the AIs there. For example, if we are using VS Code, then we have GitHub Copilot, which is integrated, right? Of course, with your accounts, right? So, and even with my account, right? So we will have limited access to Copilot, but then we will look at it, right? If we are using any other code editor, for example, we have Cursor and we have Anti-Gravity. Anti-Gravity is a tool from Google which provides Gemini built-in. Okay. Then, of course, right at the end, we will go through the capabilities that Archer provides in terms of APIs, right? So we have OData API, we have REST API, and we have SOAP APIs, right? So we will look at all these different APIs, how we can use or where should we use which API, right? So we have some capabilities of SOAP API which are not there in REST API. We have some capabilities in REST API which are not there in SOAP API, right? So which API, which type of API we should use in which what situation, right? So we will look at those scenarios from Archer perspective. We will also have a brief discussion on ServiceNow APIs since we will integrate with ServiceNow, right? So that means we will be consuming ServiceNow APIs as well. So we will have a brief discussion on how we can access data from ServiceNow using APIs, right? And again, all that, right? What kind of authentication it supports, what are different APIs to retrieve records, to update records, right? Uh, and then, by combining all this knowledge, we will build a live integration between Archer and ServiceNow, right? Uh, there are some best practices that we need to follow while writing these integrations, right? So we will look at those best practices. We will also implement those best practices along the way, right? So while writing this code, what is the best practice? What are the best practices, different best practices that we need to implement to ensure that we have a highly performant, highly reusable, configurable, right, and a secure integration between two tools, right? We will we will go through these terminologies as well, right? What is configurable? What do you mean by secure, right? uh, Highly performant, right? So how we can improve performance, how we can um, modularize it, how we can create different modules, how we can create different classes, reusability, right? So how we can write just one integration and use it in different integrations, one piece of code, and then use it in different integrations, right? So, which means the code that we will develop here in our classes, of course, right? So I will sync it in with GitHub, and then you guys will have access to that GitHub repo, so which means the code that we will build, you will have access to it. How you can reuse that code, of course, from Archer perspective, right? Or ServiceNow's perspective as well. So how you can reuse that code to integrate Archer or ServiceNow with any other tool, right? So again, we will look at that as well, right? So again, right. So that's pretty much in terms of what we are going to cover in our training sessions, right? Any question or any doubt so far, or If you feel that I've missed anything or any certain topic that you would want me to take a session on, right? So please go ahead, guys. Right. Okay. I believe we are clear on the table of content. Right. Um, Priya, are you there?
Yes, Gurdas.
Danny, sorry, we have a question and then we can share the uh, course curriculum, right? Yes, Danny.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know what level of knowledge we should also have for the GRC Archer tool. So first, I guess we should have prerequisite knowledge of Archer tool, correct?
Well, honestly, no, right? Just consider that it's a tool which has certain records, right? So you don't really need to know what is Archer because let's say tomorrow you're integrating Archer with any other tool, right? Which you do not have experience on or knowledge on, right? But for us, it's just an application which has certain tables, and that's certain tables, those certain tables have some data which we can pull using APIs, right? So if you even if you do not have enough experience in Archer, then also it's fine because at the end Archer is what? It's just a collection of different applications. When I say application, it's a table, right? It's just a collection of different tables. We have different records in those tables, and we have different APIs with which we can access the data from those tables. And similarly, ServiceNow as well, right? Again, we will be integrating with ServiceNow. So, I mean, again, right? We don't have experience in ServiceNow, but still we will integrate with ServiceNow, right? So, again, it's not necessarily we need to know what Archer is or what GRC
Okay.
is, right? We will
Okay. And
simply we will simply pick two tables from Archer and ServiceNow, and we will create an integration in these two tables, right? Another topic that I missed from this slide, the table of content, which is JavaScript transport feeds, right? So again, uh, and this is purely from an Archer perspective, right? So someone who has good experience in Archer. So we have something called data feed, and in those data feed we have an type of data feed which is called JavaScript transport data feed, right? So what it does is it lets us make API calls through data feeds, right? So again, with the knowledge that we will gain through these sessions, we can also write JavaScript data feeds, right? So that's also another topic that we will go through.